So first of all, I'm George Crump, Chief Marketing Officer at Verge.io. Prior to joining Verge, I worked for a little bit at a company called Store One, who I'm sure you guys have met with before. And then for a long time, prior to that, about 14 years, I was founder and lead analyst at a site called Storage Switzerland, storageswiss.com. The funny part about that, especially with this audience, is never actually been to Switzerland. Um, so people would call me up all the time and start talking to me, and I'm like, yeah, I don't know what you're saying. So thank you though. But anyways, the so I come at the marketing front a little different because of that background. I will tell you that it drives the people that are used to selling to normal CMOs. It drives them crazy because I guess I don't think like a normal CMO, and so it makes for a good time. In fact, when we get to the demo today, this is actually my home lab that I'm running the software on. So, anyways, what I'd like to do is start with a quick presentation. Feel free to keep it interactive. I'll try to. I know we're on Zoom. Again, I apologize I couldn't be there in person, but I'll try to pause occasionally and see if you guys have any questions. But feel free to interrupt me because if I get going, I'll get on a roll. So let me go ahead and share.
Yeah.
Can you guys see that? Okay.
Yes. Yep. Very good.
Thank you. We're best known, I think, right now at this moment in time as being a VMware alternative. We jumped on that as a trend very early. In fact, prior to the acquisition, and as you guys have, I'm sure, reported on multiple times, Broadcom is my favorite company in the whole world because they've driven a lot of customers to us. So we certainly are very appreciative of all their efforts that they've done so far. When we started writing about it, back in January of what would it have been, 22, 23? It's about 9 months before the actual purchase was finalized. It seemed like a very risky thing to do, and it turned out, not only did it turn out as we had hoped, but even better than we had hoped. But that's really not the core capabilities of the company, and I'll talk about that a little bit. What we're really actually is a private cloud operating system that allows organizations and service providers of different types to provide essentially complete autonomous infrastructure. And so I'll talk about that a little bit as we go through. So as I sort of hinted to, we have three real key markets that we're focused on right now. One is cloud and managed service providers. There's some very specific features in the product. One's called a virtual data center, or our take on tenancy, that appeal very directly to that type of customer. In fact, this was really our first market. If you look at the majority of our initial customers, they would fall into this category. Either, and the definition has become a little fuzzy. The way we define it is a cloud service provider is somebody that hosts other people's applications, just like, say, AWS or somebody else does. A managed service provider is really somebody that provides high-touch IT support, and that may include remote connections and, in some cases, maybe disaster recovery as a service. And so the product works particularly well in that space. And we started doing that in about the 2014 timeframe. Around 2019, we started to get a lot of requests from VMware customers specifically who were they were larger VMware customers that were growing, and they needed the ability to do more of, if you will, a private cloud or infrastructure modernization, however you want describe it. And so we started to see a lot of VMware customers come to us. So we created a very powerful migration function that I'll talk about here in a minute. Very seamless, very fast. And we started to, even back in 2020, really started to absorb VMware customers. Obviously, once the acquisition was finalized, life changed dramatically for us, and we started to really increase customer base. We are currently adding about a customer every 2 to 3 days at this point in time, and so we're growing rapidly. And then the latest one that's been there but has really all of a sudden heated up again, thanks to the actions of a vendor, is VxRail modernization. There's a fair amount of Dell VxRail installed. Michael Dell, as you guys may even have reported on, recently announced that VxRail is no more, and that their recommendation is that they go to what they call the Dell Private Cloud. And they don't come out and just say it, but the implication is that you replace all that VxRail hardware with new Dell hardware and the Dell Private Cloud solution, which I'll talk about in a minute. The problem is, well, there's two real problems with that. Most of that VxRail hardware as it exists today still has plenty of serviceable life left in it. Secondly, as you guys I'm sure have reported on, the cost of memory and flash storage is going through the roof. And so the cost to buy new servers has increased dramatically. So you'll notice that we don't say VxRail replacement here. We're talking about VxRail modernization, where you load our software on that VxRail hardware and you get better performance, better efficiency using the exact same hardware that you had before. And we have almost a dozen customers now that have gone through that process quite successfully. The largest of which being Topgolf, which is a large entertainment venue here in the States. So those are our three key areas of penetration. We also do, and it kind of falls into this umbrella at some point, we also do a fair amount of competition in what I would call the storage refresh business. So if a customer's reached end of life on their storage, and we can find out about it, we tend to do well in those situations because they're getting ready to replace storage anyways. 3 years ago, it was a bit of a negative that we had to also replace your hypervisor in that process. So here is the core difference between us and what I believe is everybody else on the market. There might be somebody else out there that does this or gets close, but at least in my research, I have not found that person or that company. On the left, you have what we commonly call the IT stack. We've almost come to accept this. This is the way it's done. This is the way software is developed, right? You've got a team of people working on the compute layer, vSphere, ESXi. You've got a team of people working on the storage. In the hyperconverged space, that would be vSAN or something similar, or this could be a dedicated all-flash array. Then you've got another team of people working on the network. In the VMware space, it's NSX. Of course, this could be Cisco or Juniper or any of those kind of guys. And then you've got an automation layer that we're seeing a lot more companies try to get into, where they're trying to integrate with Terraform and Packer and Ansible and things like that. And then at some point, you're going to try to manage this whole thing, and that's what you would probably do with something like vCenter. What we did so all of these are separate code bases, certainly developed by, if it's one company, it's all developed by different teams within the company. So in the case of VMware, there's a vSAN team and an NSX team and a vSphere team and a vCenter team. In a traditional three-tier architecture, obviously, Pure Storage is doing their work on storage, VMware is doing their work on the hypervisor, and Cisco or whomever is doing their work on the network, right? So you've got this complexity almost built into the solution. On the right side of the screen is the way we approach things, right? So it's a single piece of code. So when a customer installs our product, they install one thing, one software. It has a complete virtualization capability. It has a very robust storage software. It has a complete layer 2, layer 3 network functionality. and it has all the management capability all built in. Okay. The advantage of this approach is we don't have duplication of efforts, right? We have a single metadata structure that controls the entire environment. We understand all the memory. We understand how it's being applied and things like that. So we understand everything. And so this is a single code base that controls everything, and it's a very unified experience. And so the total code base on the right is about 400,000 lines of code. If I took on the left, if I took VMware, that stack would be close to 30 million lines of code. If I can deliver the same features in a fraction of the amount of lines of code, I'm going to be more efficient, right? Now it's up to me to prove to you guys that we can deliver the same features, but that's the idea. And this is why you can install us on older VxRail hardware or older servers and actually see better performance than what you had before with whatever product you had prior to that. And obviously VMware is 80% of the market. That's who we're replacing the most of. But we have a fair amount of Nutanix customers that we've replaced. We have a few scale computing customers that we've replaced. We have, as I mentioned, VxRail, but of course that's mostly VMware. The other big difference in our product is it's a single part number, and we license by the physical server. We don't penalize the customer because they have 4 processors and 200 cores, or if they have, today you can easily put a petabyte of capacity inside a server. We don't charge by how much capacity they have. And so our customers will, not in the first round because they run us on existing hardware, but in the second round, they will buy fewer, denser servers and start to save money in multiple areas. Obviously, power efficiency, rack and floor space, typically cooling efficiency. All of those things start to come into the picture as well. Does all that make sense?
Yeah, short question. How is
Yes.
it possible that your code is 10 times more efficient than the one from VMware? What have you done different?
Well, individually, that might be an argument that we'd have to somehow prove, which I don't know how we could, but it's the combination of all of this code into one piece of code, right? Where, like I said, these are all different teams in different areas of the country, different parts of the world, frankly, where this is all done by one group of gentlemen in Ann Arbor, Michigan, and they all know all the code, right? And so just that by itself is what gives us this high level of efficiency. And then, of course, in my guy's opinion, certainly my opinion, our algorithms, the way we design the actual mathematics of the product is better, right? That's probably harder to prove, except in the real world, you can see it. And we've got case study after case study after case study where customers have installed us on existing hardware and seen better performance than what they had before.
And another question, George. I understand the move from Broadcom VMware over to your product. I'm sure you'll talk more about that. But what you mentioned that you've also got folks who are moving over from Scale and from Nutanix. Just curious, at a high level, what kind of feedback? What's the reasoning that people are leaving those platforms to come to yours?
Yeah, good question. So the Scale one is actually easy. In some sense of irony, Scale doesn't scale, right? The last I checked, now they might have fixed this here recently, but the last I checked, their limit is 8 nodes per cluster or per system. We have unlimited nodes per environment. Again, the prior question about efficiency, this goes back to that, right? Because we're so efficient and our metadata is relatively flat and compact, I can scale the number of nodes that I can manage significantly higher. I have 5 production customers that are all 70 nodes plus in a single environment, or what we refer to as a system, a single site, single system. And so we'll get a lot of those people in the scale environment that will transition to us just because they've reached some sort of a limit. Interestingly enough, we won't run on the scale branded hardware, right? Because most of the time, if I remember correctly, it's super micro chassis anyways. So that's no problem. On the Nutanix side, it tends to be a cost issue. Their cost model is pretty close to VMware's. And they have this same stacking issue that I have shown here on the left. And so a lot of times we'll get a customer that's reached the renewal point with Nutanix, gets a renewal price, and then will reach out to us. And again, I have, a dozen or so customers that are running on Nutanix branded hardware. That answer
Another
your question?
question. So
Sure.
yeah, another question. Let's imagine this the second. The left case. The user is satisfied by everything except one layer. Let's say vSAN. But you want to keep the rest. So for you to replace, you have to replace everything.
Correct.
Is it correct?
That's correct.
Okay. Okay. So in that case,
for us,
you eliminate the opportunity. Yeah. In that case,
Yes.
you don't consider the opportunity. Okay.
That's correct. Yeah, because if I broke apart the product, then I wouldn't have my efficiency advantages, right? And so the good news is, at least right now, I mean, maybe it's not good news for us. The good news is everybody's mad at everybody, right? So we don't run into that as much as you would think. Usually they're ready to replace everything. Where it can be an issue, frankly, is if I have a customer that wants to move off of VMware, and let's say they're running Pure Storage for their array. Pure Storage does a good job. Their customers are relatively happy, and they don't want to move. So if it's a fiber channel attached Pure Storage device, I can use it. We have a way to make fiber channel work for us. There is some redundancy there. What really happens most of the time in those situations is the customer will use Pure Storage until the next renewal cycle and then switch to us, because the internal storage and I'll show you again in a second, what we do with SSDs and things like that, so efficient. And even still today, server, in fact, maybe more so now, server SSDs are significantly less expensive than the exact same SSD put inside a vendor branded system.
So another question. Let's consider the pure software approach, okay, and not the the hardware approach. So on the left, finally, you compete. Let's say a user consider the left stack, but instead of vSAN, he use StoreMagic, for instance, etc. He built his own stack. So the competition you have finally is people with the entire stack from one vendor like VMware, but also the competition with people who finally build and try to select the best element they can consider for every layer.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, and in those situations, we actually do quite well. A customer we just did a webinar with, Linsco, used to use VMware and StoreMagic and replaced everything with us and are very happy.
Good.
Okay. All right. So the other thing I wanted to point out here was the other thing that makes people very happy is our licensing is by server. So not by number of processors or cores or storage. I know I touched on this a little bit, but that people really, I mean, an IT guy doesn't, take long to figure out what the advantage of that is, right? Because they're getting hammered usually on per core licensing. So that's the other thing there. So kind of talk about this a little bit. So the other big thing we've done a very, very good job with is abstracting our software from the hardware. So we're a pure software play. We don't sell hardware. As I already mentioned, we run on we've got production customers on Nutanix, VxRail, Store Magic, not Store Magic, Scale Computing, and obviously just white box servers or super micro servers or Dell HPE. You can also mix servers, so you can have servers from different vendors within the same system. We can manage different generations of CPUs. We can also support different brands of CPUs. So you can have Intel and AMD as an example inside the same environment. Okay, we can manage that for you. Now you got to be in that environment. You got to be a little bit more careful because the processor, if the VM is designed to run on a particular type of processor, we can emulate that processor, but obviously at that point we're going to see some performance issues. But customers that are going to do that tend to know what they're doing, and so they tend to kind of follow the best practices quite well. The other thing that I wanted to point out here was that the way the product works is it's not, so you might have noticed we use the term ultra converged instead of hyper converged. The reason for that specifically is that we can have mixed roles within the what we refer to as a system, which you might think of as a cluster. So I could have, in a 10 node environment, I could have 3 nodes that are just doing storage and then 7 nodes that are just doing compute. And so it solves the other hyperconverged issue, which is, you don't typically scale the environment perfectly, compute, storage, memory, networking. You can have different resource levels in every single server, and we can manage that in a balanced fashion. So it solves that problem as well.
Perhaps one question about your VergeOS kernel. What you call your VergeOS kernel? It's a kind of a hypervisor like KVM. In fact, it's not just only a question of marketing to call it VergeOS kernel.
So our hypervisor is KVM based. Obviously, it doesn't. By the time it gets through our stuff, it doesn't really look much like KVM anymore because it's got storage code and compute code and all kinds of other code integrated into it anymore. But
your kernel is not open source. KVM is open source. You have some specific code inside VergeOS kernel, and the VergeOS kernel is not open source.
Yeah. So I'm sorry.
Do you have some contribution to the KVM kernel? Some people, some developer, we improve the code, blah blah blah.
Yeah, we've done some improvements to the KVM code. We probably know it better than. I shouldn't. We know it very, very well, again, because we're so in deep at the source code level because we're integrating our storage code in and all of that, our networking code. Yeah, but we've contributed back. Usually what we're contributing back is bug fixes and things like that. Any other questions?
Well, I was just Alex here from Australia. I was wanting to ask about the underlying platform. I mean, I'm assuming that's some sort of a Linux-based system, and then you're running imported VMware or other virtual machines, and then doing this in a more efficient way than using VMware or somebody else. Are there power savings? Is your system able to do this with less memory or more efficiently? And I mean, have you implemented AI in some way to improve things, seeing as that's the flavor of the middle years of the 2020s? I mean, you're probably going to talk about this on future slides, but these are sort of the questions that are coming to mind.
Sure, yeah, no problem. I mean, and ask the questions anytime they come to you. But so yeah, we pull directly the Linux code we use is pulled directly from linux.org. So we're using if you will, the core source. And then we load in KVM, QEMU, the storage software, the network software, and integrate it all together and optimize it so it works together. Again, the efficiency, I mean, the lab that I'll show you guys here in a little bit, I'm running on two microservers, and really to call them microservers is being very complimentary. They're basically mini PCs, and if I had time, I could show you me getting 30, 40,000 IOPS off of a couple of consumer grade NVMe SSDs. So it's very performant and also very efficient. Most of our customers, either initially or eventually, can actually downsize their environment, essentially shrink the environment. So we've had multiple customers go from, say, 12 nodes to 10 nodes or 12 nodes to 8 nodes, and they just don't need them. And frankly, what we're seeing, especially here very recently, is customers pulling memory. They're decommissioning servers that they don't need anymore and pulling memory out of those servers and putting them into the older servers.
So the older servers then have a memory boost, and
Exactly.
they have memory to spare. And I'm sorry, this is probably a basic question, but are your customers people who are doing these sort of services on premise, or are you actually getting data centers to rip out some of their existing, Intel and AMD, servers and putting in your technology to save money on the cost of running it, the cost of cooling, the cost of memory? Is it both those scenarios?
Yes, both. Yeah. So we always run on premise. We don't today. We don't run in like AWS or Azure or Amazon. We're an on-premise, essentially an alternative. And customers range from 3, 4. You typically obviously have to have some servers for us to be appropriate. And it's usually you got to have 3 or 4 servers to be in the market that we would compete in. And then we have customers, very large that are in the hundreds of servers that use us. And it ranges from, as I mentioned, cloud service providers to high-end university research facilities, University of Michigan, which I'm told is the largest university research facility in the United States, runs us exclusively. We are their infrastructure, and they provision resources off of us. And then, standard businesses that, like I said, that you never even heard of because they're just a small business doing their job.
Yeah, but as you were saying, I mean, you don't, you're a private cloud. I mean,
Yes.
you help companies set up their own. It's an alternative to AWS.
Correct. Yes. In fact, we were tempted to really focus on, if you remember, and it's come up a few times, right? Cloud repatriation. We can provide, I'll say, at least much of the capabilities that you would get into AWS or Google. You can build a very similar infrastructure. That's what our service providers do. It's just that the VMware alternative market is dominant right now, right? So, but we probably do a cloud repatriation 3 or 4 times a quarter, where our guys moving, 400 or 500 workloads out of AWS or Google and putting it on us.
Yep. And so and again, I'm sorry, this is probably a very basic question, but how long have you been in operation, and how successful are you? I mean, obviously you're part of the IT press tour to get more publicity, but what's the quick snapshot of your market presence?
Yeah, so as I mentioned, the company founded in 2012. First product was late 2014, so call it 2015. The first 4 or 5 years was focused primarily on service providers. That was really the intent of the company. Right before I came on board, they were starting to see a growth in just VMware migration, but not because of the Broadcom thing, just because of scale issues or performance issues, things like that. My team came on specifically to facilitate this inbound market potential, the VMware alternative, and now we expect that to continue for a good 5-6 years at least. But in parallel to that, we're also now starting to see a lot of companies look at, the words vary, right? Infrastructure modernization, private cloud, whatever. We do a very good job hosting AI workloads. You'll see more on that as we continue. And so it's an interesting product because there's not like a niche for us. And when I talk to potential investors, as an example, they always want me to, well, you need to focus on something. I'm like, well, Cisco doesn't focus on something, right? VMware didn't focus. We're a horizontal product that solves a lot of problems for a lot of different types of companies, right? And so that's kind of been our mantra.
Yeah, that's a good place to be. And look, I'm only asking from my point of view as representing Australia, although we do have a lot of readers in the US and other parts of the world. But do you have customers in Australia? Is it mainly the US? Is it Europe? Is it global? What's the short version there?
Yeah, the bulk of our customers today are US. We have probably the second largest market for us is is Europe, and then I want to say we have probably just less than a dozen customers in Australia.
Yeah, well, that's great. Aussie, oi, oi, oi.
It's better than zero, right?
Yeah, that's right.
So, yeah. So anyway, so that's that. Any other questions before I go on?
No, you keep going, please. Yeah.
All right, so I'm going to break down some of these components. So again, all of these are not separate products; they're integrated in. But as you can imagine, they are very essential to customers, right? And so at the heart, one of the key things is what we call VergeFS, which is our equivalent to vSAN. It has built-in global inline deduplication, except unlike any other deduplication on the market, it's integrated into the core of the OS. So the hypervisor, the network, the storage, and memory, I accidentally bold-faced that maybe because memory prices are going through the roof, but are all deduplicated, right? So you can get a lot more impact by using our product because of this duplication. And if you think about, I think Pure Storage does a very, very good job with deduplication, but they're at the back end of the process, right? When you write data to Pure Storage, they run it through their algorithm. They do a very good job with it. If they've seen it before, they update metadata and they go on. When you go to recall that data, they got to rehydrate it or expand it and send it back up the entire network. We don't have to do that because every node understands the metadata. We can transfer data between nodes without having to rehydrate it. And so it's incredibly efficient in data movement. RAM cache is deduplicated. And so one of the things, especially now, we're advising customers is keep the memory in your VM as small as you possibly can. You don't need cache in your VM. Our cache is better and deduplicated. And so they understand that and are starting to understand that and realize the cost implications of embracing that.
Just one question: How do you call your live motion application? Because at the end we say live VM migration between tiers. It's a kind of a live motion.
Yes, we can live migrate across physical servers and between tiers of storage, sort of what I'm trying to depict here.
But do you have a specific name for this functionality, or it's just?
I'm sorry, I didn't understand.
Do you have a specific name like live motion for this functionality, or it's just?
No, we just call it live migration. So yeah, it's just we don't have a product name for it like vMotion or anything like that.
And sorry, it's Alex here again from Australia. Just turning my camera to me. In 2026, what are people? What data is being duplicated now? I mean, when they talk about deduplication, from what I remember about this from years ago, it was like, I don't know, documents or photos or whatever. But what sort of files are being duplicated these days in 2026 that need global inline deduplication?
So the same data it's always been, right? That data really hasn't changed much. Databases are still prevalent. Files are still prevalent. Operating system images are obviously, those are all deduplicated. But it's also the deduplication for us, because of this deduplication, the movement of data between nodes and between sites, because it's globally deduplicated, is an efficiency as well, right? And so there's a 3-to-1, 4-to-1 reduction ratio for the customer, and most customers will report that they're seeing better deduplication rates with us than they did with their prior storage system. Again, a lot of that has to do because of where we're doing the deduplication, but a lot of it is to help us with transfer of data, right? If I can cut your data load by 3 or 4-to-1, that also means my transfer between nodes is more efficient, my transfer to a remote site is more efficient, things like that. So the other thing we have is our snapshots. Now, our snapshots technically aren't snapshots, they're really copies. They're full copies, except remember, I've got deduplication integrated into the core of the OS, so a copy can't happen. And so by definition, if you make a copy of something, it's 100% deduplicatable, right? And now the advantage of that is most storage system snapshots, they're a sort of this hierarchical tree of interconnected and interdependent metadata, right? And so that gets more and more complex the more snapshots you take and the longer you retain those snapshots. With us, because it's essentially very flat, every snapshot is totally independent. So you can have as many snapshots as you want and retain them as long as you want to, and there's no performance impact whatsoever for doing so. Okay, so I have customers with 7, 8, 9-year-old snapshots today. They're so independent that you can even delete the thing that created the snapshot, like the original volume, and promote the snapshot of that volume back into production. And it's not a rollback. We're just literally saying, okay, snapshot, you're now production, and that will all work. That becomes particularly valuable in a ransomware attack, where if a ransomware attack occurs and I've got a snapshot that's, say, 5 or 6 minutes old, it might be faster and easier just to delete the current volume and make the snapshot that's 5 or 6 minutes old production. And we can do that instantly. Snapshots are also immutable. So you can designate certain snapshots to be immutable. And for us, immutable means immutable. If you say, I want the snapshot to be immutable, the only thing that can delete that snapshot is the schedule. And so there's a few warnings when a customer sets this, but you can't call support and say, yeah, I'd like to delete that immutable snapshot. That's just not how immutable works, right? And so customers like that because there are, if you do it wrong, there could be problems. Even the dual key systems that I see in some other environments, that's not technically immutable. These are real immutable snapshots. And so those are there. Final point, performance doesn't come up so much as it used to because of flash and things like that, but very, very high performance, efficient system. We had multiple tests now with other companies, Solidigm being the most recent, where we were getting well over 1 million IOPS using 64K block sizes, so we weren't cheating and using 4K blocks. We were getting very, very high throughput. We did, to kind of put this in more practical terms, we built a 8-node cluster using the servers like I have in my closet here. They're about $1,500 each, and US. And with 8 of those, we were achieving almost 1.5 million IOPS in performance. And so if I did the math on that system, the cost of an IOPS was about 67 cents. Right. So
just one more question. One more question about your slide. I'm sorry, but I don't understand what is the difference between the SSD and the NVMe. NVMe is a protocol, and SSD can be NVMe. So what do you have this difference between SSD and NVMe?
yeah, I probably should have thought that through a little bit better. So an NVMe SSD, and where I said SSD, I should have like a SAS SSD or a SATA SSD there. I was just showing that we could support different types of memory tiers. Good catch, though. Yeah, so thank you for that. So anyway, so that's this is all again built into the code, comes with it, no additional charge, incredibly high performance environment, very scalable, very resilient. I almost spent a lot of time on this, but complete software-defined networking capability, layer 2 and layer 3 services, no external controllers built directly into the product. Most customers won't throw out their existing network on day one. They'll gradually start to implement these capabilities as we go forward, and then start to buy essentially commodity or more basic switches as they advance with our product. And then we give all the functionality of the high-end switches. So we can do things like microsegmentation and BGP and all the different things you would expect in a network. And again, integrated into the product, no additional charge.
No, it's NSX. Is it
Similar
NSX?
to this hero.
NSX.
Oh yeah. So yes, this will compete with NSX for sure.
No,
Except
no,
it's
because
free and integrated.
at the beginning, you explained it was everything was integrated. It was the only core. Everything was inside. And now with your slide and your presentation, you understand that is very close to VMware and to the VMware stack with a edge equivalent at the VMware stack. HPE is going the same with the Morpheus OS. They build a platform, a solution, and I talked with the guy in Discover in December. And it's very close than the Morpheus OS platform with HPE, and also it's very close to VMware with all your stack. So
Yeah.
but
Again,
it's difficult to reinvent it everywhere in virtualization. So
yeah, the core difference, I mean, software-defined networking has been around forever, software-defined storage has been around forever. The core difference is, again, to my knowledge, we're the only company to integrate this into a single code base, which gives us our efficiency. So the other big thing is data protection. There's two aspects. So the snapshots is sort of the first layer of protection, and then we have another layer locally. So all data is mirrored between nodes strategically, and then we have the ability to do a three-way mirror if a customer chooses. We added a capability called what we call IO Guardian to kind of put that issue to rest, because our fear was, okay, you want three-way replication, you want three-way mirroring. Well, if you have 100 nodes, and you might want four-way mirroring, and then that gets really expensive, right? So we came with this idea of IO Guardian, and what it is in the primary site, it's a standalone instance of VirtualOS that is designed just to receive data. And so you would take an existing server, fill it up full of storage, essentially enough to match your existing environment. So similar to how you would scale a backup appliance. And then we replicate data, snapshot data, to that device or to that server every time a snapshot's taken. Okay? If I have a catastrophic failure where I lose 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 drives, doesn't matter, I, in real time, can pull the blocks of information that I am missing off of this IO Guardian server. So we've had customers have really catastrophic issues and still maintain complete consistency. I had a customer in last February who had a 4-node environment, 4 servers, and then they had an IO Guardian server. A service technician went into their data center, and there was nothing wrong with our environment, but for some reason decided to eject all the drives from the first 3 servers, all of them. Finally, somebody stopped him. The 4th server was still intact. Obviously, at this point, I'm missing, 3/4 of my data. In real time, the operating system automatically restarts all the VMs that were on those 3 servers, because obviously at this point they had crashed, and starts pulling data off of the IO Guardian server. Now, what's important to understand is it doesn't restore the data. I don't have, in this scenario, I don't have time to move data. It takes longer to copy a piece of data across the wire and write it than it does just to get the data. Number two, I might not have enough capacity to do a restore. And number three, I don't need all the data back. I just need the data that's needed at that particular moment in time. So in real time, I'm negotiating with this IO Guardian server as to what data I need, and I'm pulling it. And so in this environment, the customer's customers saw no outage whatsoever, and no data loss, and everything was fine. Obviously, we had to get the other servers back in production and things like that. But that's what this is designed for. It's a very inexpensive way to maintain availability. And so it's very, as you might guess, it's incredibly popular with our customers. I would say 95% of our customers implement this because it's just the cost of another server license. So very, very efficient there.
It's a super amazing backup that people didn't have in the past. I mean, it's kind of like the magic people think that a RAID drive will give them.
Exactly. Except because of the intelligence and the integration, we understand the data better than a RAID array would. It's sort of like the way I've described it sometimes, it's sort of like the next generation of Veeam's instant recovery, right? Instant recovery is pretty amazing, except you do have to actually recover something. With us, we just start feeding blocks of data in real time back into the environment. Okay. Now, for disaster recovery, we have a feature called IO Replicate, which is our replication software. It's WAN optimized. It leverages our deduplication. We only send unique data. That means if you have 5 sites replicating into one, only unique data comes across the wire. So it's very optimized for that. We also have a feature that we'll talk about in a second called virtual data centers that makes recovery very easy. And so, again, really powerful capability. Again, all built into the product, no extra charge or anything like that.
But what's the story of why the guy was ejecting all the drives? And was he a spy, a saboteur? How did they
he was,
catch him?
good
What
question.
did they do to him afterwards?
Well, he was fired. He was a service technician from a third-party service organization that was there to fix I think he was there to fix an array, and for some reason thought the servers that our software was managing was the array and started to eject drives.
So it's fat finger error.
Yeah, and of course, we saw because if the customers will let us, we monitor all the customer sites, and of course they can monitor it. So we saw all the alerts coming in because we don't like seeing drives disappear generally, and so that it set off alarms at our site, and we were already in the process of calling the customer, and they of course saw it also, and that's how they were able to stop the guy from it. Now, that's my favorite story to tell. What happens most of the time is you have a cascading problem, especially with flash drives. The flash drives are great, except when they fail, they do tend to fail in groups. And so it's if you get a drive that's 5 or 6 years old, you probably bought, let's say you have a dozen flash drives, you probably bought them all at the same time. They generally will hit the same life expectancy at about the same time. And there's a tendency that they will all fail, not exactly at the same moment in time, but within a few minutes of each other. And that's what it's really, that's the kind of more typical scenario that we would see this starting to kick in. So the other thing is we have true multi-tenancy. We call it virtual data centers. So imagine a group of hardware, 4 servers, 40 servers, doesn't matter. And then what you could do is create tenants. So essentially virtual data centers. And these virtual data centers can all have their own attributes. They could be, you can have different network settings, different storage settings. Obviously, they can all have their own VMs, whatever. And then you can make snapshots of these tenants, like we were talking about. And then those snapshots are replicated however you have replication designed, and they'll also go to the IO Guardian server. Well, the way this works is why our disaster recovery is so successful for our customers. Because when I take a snapshot of a tenant or a virtual data center, I'm capturing everything at a perfectly consistent state, right? So I got the last 100 IP addresses the guy just added, got those. The last tweaks he made to snapshots, got those. The last 5 VMs he added, got those, right? And so the thing that arrives in the DR site is perfectly consistent to whenever that last snapshot happens. And so as it stands today, we have a 100% success rate in disaster recovery with our customers. And most DR situations for our customers take less than an hour. Okay. And it usually, we can actually show it happening typically in about 3 to 4 mouse clicks. It's very simple. Because if you think about what VMware brought to market with a VM, right, it encapsulated a server, allowed you to turn that server essentially into a file, and then move that file between servers. We do that to the entire data center. We turn the entire data center essentially into a file, and then now you can move that data center anywhere you want to. And so this is why, for example, we're so popular with cloud service providers, because every new customer gets a virtual data center. The service provider doesn't have to go out and buy new hardware. They just create a new data center, allocate some resources to it, and that's that customer's environment. And then every customer can have different service levels. They can log into their own system, so that they get their own IP address of, some service providers are literally just providing, essentially the hardware or the infrastructure. Others might be more full service, but the customer has their own IP address into that particular tenant. And to them, it looks like that's their entire VirgOS world. Does that make sense?
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah, one sec.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
with this is pretty unique, right? But with this,
Yes.
is it, who
Yes.
else offer with pretty similar features? And does it help you to replace as well, not only VMware, but Nutanix?
Yes. Yeah, VMware has this with vCloud Director. To my knowledge, Nutanix does not have this. They have I forget what the name of it is. They have a flavor of it, but it's not really full multi-tenancy. And to my knowledge, none of the other competitors have it today. But this is, and then you can create subtenants as well. So you can create a tenant, and then like that tenant C, if I give him permission, he could create tenants. So we have one customer, one service provider that is a service provider for service providers, and they'll create a tenant for the smaller service provider, and then that smaller service provider will go out and sell to customers, and he'll create subtenants in his little zone. Okay, and we can also hard allocate resources. So let's say we're talking about GPUs, for example. Not everybody needs a GPU, and GPUs, as you guys well know, are kind of expensive. You could hard allocate GPUs to specific virtual data centers, and only that virtual data center could use that GPU. Does that make sense?
Yep, amazing.
In the enterprise, where we'll see this is very popular in the enterprise. This is also very popular in education. In the enterprise, the most common that I see in the enterprise is production data center, test data center, development data center. And then they can make a snapshot of production, give it to test or development, and they can do their work. But I have seen some customers do, like, here's a tenant for our ERP application. Here's a tenant for user data or user applications. Here's a tenant for files or things like that. In higher education, we'll see, I don't know how it is elsewhere, but in the US, a university will have colleges, if you will, under it. So in where you guys are, Stanford will probably have like a college of business, a college of medicine, college of whatever, And so each one of those colleges will become a tenant into this master server environment. By the way, let me be very clear. Stanford is not yet a customer, so I don't want to say I was using that as a reference. But that's how we see. That's how the University of Michigan does it. That's how University of Oklahoma does it. That's how University of or Arizona State University does it. So we see that repeatedly. And in the non-university, so what we would call K through 12 education, very, very popular to have a high school data center, a middle school data center, and an elementary school data center. But all again sharing the same hardware. So very powerful capability for us, and generally speaking, pretty unique. Just a couple more slides. So we're also API first. So the GUI that you'll see here in a minute is totally driven by the API. There's nothing that the GUI can do that the API that you can't do through the API. We've done a lot of work integrating into the infrastructure as code environment. So Terraform, Ansible, Python, PowerShell, Packer. There's one I'm missing. We have a Prometheus exporter, so you can do things like observability stuff, so like Grafana and things like that. So it's very open from that perspective. Where we see a lot of feedback on this from guys that really know infrastructure as code is two things. Number one, it's very easy for them to get going because there's now a single API to write to. You go back to that stack. If you have a storage system from vendor A, your hypervisors from VMware, and your networks from, I don't know, Cisco, your Terraform or Ansible scripts are very complicated because you've got to account for all these different things. And then if you do a storage refresh, you've got to change big sections of your code to support the new storage. Our API has been the same for 12 years. It doesn't change. It doesn't matter what hardware you put underneath it. Your code is incredibly durable. The guys that are the coders love that. And so it's very popular with that. Lastly, we also have WebSocket API, so we can plug into like Slack and email and all that.
Hey, George.
Yeah.
Hey, real quick question. Just thinking through this with the APIs, and you were talking about CSPs being a big audience for you, obviously migrating from VMware over to you. Within your API, makes it easy for someone who moved from, say, a VMware or move with cloud repatriation to map APIs that they may have already been using for these other platforms over to yours just to make it easier?
Unfortunately, no, and that would be really true of anybody. The big promise with us is that's the last time you have to do that, because now you no longer have to code specially. You're coding to this master environment. Interestingly, if we can get to the guys that are in charge of automation and they hear this story, they actually become our biggest advocates, because they know they're going to have to change their code in 2 years or 3 years anyways, whenever you switch. And so the idea that they only got to do it once more, they actually become some of our biggest fans.
Got it.
Okay. Yeah. So we talked about VMware. I don't know if I need. So the big thing here is there's a winery up by you guys. I was going to use this as my example if I was in front of you. There's a winery up there called Silver Oak. For years, decades, they've talked about all they do is Cabernets. They're the best at Cabernets. I'm sure the guys in France would argue that, but that's a whole different conversation. But they think they're the best in Cabernets because all they do is Cabernets. And we think we're so efficient because we just have this one code base. Well, that becomes a problem if now you have to write a separate module to migrate VMware into you. And so I don't know if it's a point of pride or what, we decided to integrate VMware's backup API set directly into our code. And so when a customer goes to migrate to us, they point their VirtualOS environment at their vCenter environment, and vCenter thinks we're a backup product. Because it thinks we're a backup product, it gives us everything. All the settings, all the network settings, all the store, everything comes over. And we can convert it almost perfectly.
Just one more question about the migration. What I don't understand that when you say legacy virtualization, it seems to be ESX, so the basic hypervisor with VMware. But with VMware, you have a lot of components, and with all these components, you can have a private cloud with VMware. So with all the stack, with the CNCD, the Terraform, everything you need. The problem is always the price at this time with VMware, with the combo with Broadcom. We understand the platform, the only cloud, blah, 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 blah. But is the world different? Only the price, because your solution should be less expensive. It's per server. And this time with Broadcom, it's always per core, and you need to have a combo with vSphere, vCenter, and a lot of components in the combo. Is really the world different, and is the price between you and Broadcom and VMware?
So is the question, what's the price difference between us and VMware?
Yeah.
Okay.
The price and the platform also, because when you say legacy virtualization, legacy is not only ESX.
Sure.
It can be a private cloud with VMware. So that I want to understand, because we know VMware, it's a very excellent solution with Broadcom, we know the story, blah, blah, blah. But at this time,
so we are, prior to the Broadcom acquisition, we were about 30%. I'm sorry. So prior to the VMware acquisition, we were about 30% less than VMware. Since the VMware acquisition, we're anywhere from 80 to 100. Can you guys hear me? Can you guys hear me?
Yeah, keep going.
Okay. So since the VMware acquisition, we're about 80% less expensive than VMware. That's, frankly, it's just not very hard to do anymore. So
80% less.
Yeah. So again, migration is very, very fast. We've shown migrating 1,000 VMs in about 8 to 9 seconds. And so it's very fast, very capable. The VMware backup API set is actually quite good, and it feeds us data quite nicely. So that's another thing. And again, because we talk about using existing hardware a lot, most customers will do what we would call a in-place upgrade or a rolling upgrade, where they'll move all their VMs off of 1 or 2 of their existing VMware servers, refresh the environment, those 2 servers with VirtualOS, put VirtualOS on them, and then start their migration process. And then as they free up another server on the VMware side, they convert that one to a VirtualOS environment. And then so it's what we call rolling or an in-place upgrade. And so we do that quite frequently as the upgrade process, where the customer buys no additional hardware. Occasionally they'll buy a few servers, or they, if the servers are really old, they might have already had planned to replace them. But it's very common for us to use the existing hardware, and especially now, even more so over the last, month, really, where customers are very interested in keeping their existing hardware. I'm going to skip this. We talked about this. The VxRail one is it's the same thing, basically. It's just everybody thinks because it's VxRail, we can't do anything with it. We run great on it. It's just Dell servers, and it's perfectly built, ironically, for us. So Dell did a really good job building an environment for us. So that works well for us. We have, like I said, multiple customer references now of this happening. And these tend to be the happiest customers, interestingly enough, because of the amount of money they save. So last slide. This is it, right? We're 50, 70% less expensive, just in licensing, huge operational gains. Every single customer, will tell you that they just don't spend as much time at it, that they used to. You know, the common thing I'll hear is, you know, I was, inside of my VMware environment a couple hours a day. I usually will go inside my VirtualOS environment a couple times a week, right? So just something they just don't have to worry about. Big savings again with the deduplication. So very popular from that standpoint. I won't go through all these, but just quickly, highly scalable. They're scaled to hundreds of nodes. We have customers with thousands of these virtual tenants. Um, as I mentioned, the hypervisor is KVM, QEM based, with our own virtualization extensions. We support all the various guest operating systems, all the different types of networking, all the storage, media, and then management, like I said, is either the built-in HTML5 interface or the REST API. Any other questions, guys?
Yes, but perhaps some question about your customer.
Uh-huh.
At this time, in Europe, for example, because we have this discussion with a lot of VMware competitors, Nutanix. Do you have some customer in Europe, some bank, some big companies who
Yeah,
want
yeah,
to move some VM to the new platform?
yeah.
Or in
So
US, in Europe.
yeah, what I'll do before we, or as soon as we're done, is I'll send you a backdoor access to our case studies page, so you guys don't have to register for the case studies. And there's, I want to say, about a dozen or so case studies up there already, and we're adding one or two a month typically. Um, the reason there's not more is because of me. I can't write them fast enough. But again, the companies range from, you know, University of Michigan, Topgolf, Boeing, Raytheon, various parts of the military. We have the Vietnam airport system runs on us. I mean, there's a few cloud service providers in the UK and in Germany that run us. So yeah, but I can get you access to that, no problem.
Great.
So
Good. Any other questions or before we conclude? So you said in terms of pricing that you charge per server, whatever is the number of VM, storage capacity, or memory size, etc. Correct?
The big difference.
correct. Yeah. So it doesn't matter. They build the server however they want to.
Okay. Okay. And this is for VirtualOS, and I can do whatever I want to this. Oops.
Correct. Yes.
Okay. If I want to dedicate the cluster with small VMs dedicated to networking, for instance, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
You wouldn't typically dedicate the networking. There's not enough there, but what most people will do as they grow is they'll have a group of servers that are dedicated to storage, and then the rest of the servers are, you can't have a compute only node because you got to boot something, right? So most customers will have, you know, 60%, 70% of their environment with servers with essentially a boot drive and lots of compute power, and then maybe 30, 40% of their environment with a bunch of storage inside those nodes.
Okay.
So on your, it's Alex again from Australia. On your, you were explaining before that, I mean, it's VMs that are running servers and, you know, running, I guess, apps, running databases, are running all sorts of things. We had a presentation just earlier today from a company called InfoScale, and they claim to be real-time resilience for any app anywhere, prevent downtime before it happens. They say they deliver unparalleled availability for mission-critical applications across data centers, clouds, and containers. And one of the examples they were giving was that how when there was the AWS outage sort of late last year, some of their customers were able to migrate from one AWS region to another and continue going. And so, I mean, do you work with people like InfoScale so that somehow, they can, I mean, you've got this IO Guardian and IO Replicator, but the InfoScale people sound like they could work with you as a private cloud provider to somehow add another level of resiliency. Have you ever heard of them? Could you ever work with them? Is this something that you would do, or would you say you don't need somebody else to help you stay resilient?
So where we could use somebody else, so I am loosely familiar with them. Where we would, so yes, we'd love to work with them. I don't know them, but when it gets below, when a customer needs 1 minute, 2 minute RTOs, that's where we would start to struggle. There's not a lot of, I mean, there are some, no question, but there's not a lot of customers and there's not a lot of applications that truly need 1 or 2 minutes of outage. You take the AWS outage as an example. There's a whole bunch of companies who've been very happy to only be down a minute, right? So, and generally, when you start to get closer and closer to zero, it gets more and more expensive. But I'm not denying that those situations don't exist. And yeah, we'd love to work with somebody like InfoScale. Again, because of our API set, it's generally pretty easy to do so.
Well, I own the whole presentation, so I'll make sure that Philip gets you a copy and you can look at it. And if there's any, if you want to talk to them, I'm sure they'll be able to talk to you.
Sure. Yeah, I'd love to talk to them. We like partnering.
Sure.
So the GUI, so you demonstrate the GUI right now, right?
Yes. Yeah, I thought I'd at least show it to you guys. I know it's getting late for y'all, but this is what it would look like. So I've got so this is my sister site. Literally, it's right in the closet behind me. It's 2 micro PCs with dual 10 gig Ethernet cards interconnected and a 1 gig out to my main network. And then this is my Mac that I'm logged into here. You can see it's running Safari. And I can, so here's, my virtual machines. You can see I'm taking snapshots at different increments here. If I drill in further, I've got a Windows VM running. Let me get this guy going. And so you can, run all the normal stuff that you would like to run. Works very, very well. You can see this guy's already starting the boot now, and it's up and going. So it's very straightforward. The snapshots are all I can do. Snapshots at this level with inside the system. So I could trigger a snapshot right here, for example, and see all those, or just take a new one.
So the GUI invite me to ask you a question. What is your position regarding Proxmox today?
Well, they're a competitor.
Okay.
They fall into that same stack. Probably in my opinion, a worse case example of that stack, because they literally don't control any of the code other than essentially the GUI itself. And so they've got, from a support standpoint, things like that. It's going to be very problematic for them to move into larger enterprises. So now where they do better than us is probably home labs, right? Because today, although this will change hopefully in the next couple of quarters, we don't have a community edition. And so it's very popular for home lab people. Obviously I'm running VirtualOS in my home lab, but I kind of know a guy, so I can get it. But yeah, so that's probably my take on it. We don't honestly, we don't run into them very often anywhere in the world, especially in the U.S. My competitors tend to be VMware, and occasionally Nutanix.
So
That's
a question again,
the market.
what I understand. So you said you have finally one product, license per server.
Correct.
So it means that every feature you release, like the virtual data center, all of these, it's always included in the product, and people upgrade and they receive everything new.
Now is the release.
That's correct.
Yeah.
Yep,
Okay.
that's correct.
And
So, yeah.
one other thing too, what you were just talking about, if you guys did come up with a community edition, or a free one for that has a home, to get VMware. I'm sure you've already thought of this, but your first group of people that you need to try to get is all the V experts that are out there, and try to convince,
Yes.
give them a free home lab version, because if you can convince those guys, you basically got into all kinds of companies if they like what you got.
Yeah. So one of the things about our company is remember, we're based in Ann Arbor, Michigan, right? So we're not with the cool kids out there in Silicon Valley, or the guys in Boston or anything like that. So we're all self-funded. We will be cash flow positive this year. We like being cash flow positive. It's not it's not a mission of ours to grow faster than we can handle. I've had multiple customers tell me, look, if you guys had a community edition, you'd have 20,000 downloads the next day. I got to tell you, there's a part that sounds good, but it's kind of terrifying because that means 20,000 have questions, right? So,
One question about the company. How many people do you have in the company? And you have an office in Europe for sales and support. So how
we
many
do not
people
have
in
an
the
office.
company at this time? And you have an office in Europe, in UK, Germany, with sales and support. And you have some partners in Europe.
Yeah, so today we're less than 100 employees. We have offices. Our primary office is in Ann Arbor, Michigan, or headquarters, I should say, is in Ann Arbor, Michigan. We today do not have offices in Europe. I would expect that to happen this year.
Okay.
And are you going to have offices in Australia? The InfoScale people were looking to employ somebody there, as an example.
Oh, yeah. We've got a very, very good distributor in Singapore. And we actually have a Verge employee, and is an SE, a technical person, also in Singapore, specifically they're doing so well. We put a Verge branded employee there to service that market. So we're doing quite well in that Asia Pac market today.
What is your limitation today? What prevents you to address, let's say, more countries, more use cases, more end users, etc.?
Fair question. I think the speed at which we're willing to grow, it's probably not a great answer, but we're being very careful in how we grow. We want to make sure that we don't ruin what we have already. We have 100% customer satisfaction. You can talk to every single Verge customer and they're all happy. That's a lot of pressure, but because we're not seeking, we didn't do what other companies did and go out and get 150 million and all that kind of stuff. It's like I said, it's all self-funded. Philippe, from talking to me, I'm very careful in how I spend the money because I got to spend it like it's mine because it is. That's probably it. Just the rate at which we're willing to grow is probably one of our biggest limiters. And I don't necessarily see that as a negative. That means we make a great product and we take our time.
So you address greenfield project, you replace essentially 80% of the time VMware and sometimes Nutanix. So I understand the limitations. So you replace, as I said, in greenfield. Are you replaced sometime? Did you lose some installation and people finally say, no, I don't want any longer to work with Vergio? Did it happen?
Yes, the only customer since I've been here, which is all I can really speak to, and I'm going on like 3.5 years now. The only customer we've lost is somebody we wanted to lose because they didn't pay their bill. So in the hundreds of customers we've added, we don't, and we're a subscription model, right? So you could turn us off if you wanted to. It's just standard vanilla hardware, so you could easily replace us if you wanted to. It just doesn't happen. Like I said, right now we have 100% customer satisfaction.
Yeah. Since you introduced some pretty unique, let's say, features like the virtual data centers, etc., how the competition react to some of your new function features or innovations?
The only negative, the only thing I've seen from our competitors at this point is that they're too small. That tends to be the number one thing that they'll try to attack us with, is that we're a smaller company. We're not, the Nutanix development team is probably 3 times the size of my entire company. And so part of it is convincing people that just because you have 700 developers doesn't mean you're going to have a 700 times better product, right? That usually, and you guys know because of your history, most great products were invented by a few guys that were committed to something, but unfortunately at some point they sell, and guess what happens, right? We have the same situation. It's a very small development team that has remained committed to the product for 15 years.
Did you replace in the past scale computing?
Yeah, we've replaced scale multiple times. And we just don't run into them that often. They're small, we're small. They would probably say the same thing about us. They probably don't run into us very often. But we have replaced them a few times, yeah.
Do you know the French player Vates or Vates? It depends how it's VATES.
I do not.
It's based on Zen.
It's a Zen solution.
Yeah, it's based on Zen.
I do not.
Okay. Just one more question. One more question about the support. I understand your solution was unified with all the components inside the VergeOS. And how many releases you have each year? You have a release every 3 months, 6 months. And when you have a new release and like that, you have to make the release for all the components, or you can have a release only for one of the components. For example, only for KVM, only for the storage, only for the network, or do you push the release with all the components inside your unified solution?
So first of all, great question. We release everything at once. We do it 4 times a year, unless there's a critical security release or something like that. About 99% of the releases are no reboot. I shouldn't say that. About 75% of the releases are no reboot. We can do it inline. If you do need to do an update, it will automatically do it for you. In fact, I was just checking my GUI to see if I had already updated this one, and I did. So we haven't released it to the public yet, but I have one of the final betas of what we're going to call 26.1, which we'll be going out to market with here in about 2 weeks, 3 weeks. And I upgraded it. And this is literally how it worked. I hit upgrade. I walked away and made a peanut butter and jelly sandwich. I don't know if peanut butter and jelly sandwiches are big in France, but they're big. I like them personally. And so I went, made a peanut butter and jelly sandwich, came back, everything was rebooted and ready to go. And
One last question.
In that time, it automatically migrated VMs around so that the VMs that I had running were up and running and they never had any downtime.
Last question, and I'll give the mic to my colleague. At the beginning, if I understood well, your solution was a kind of HCI solution like Nutanix. They move from the HCI to the new solution when they cut the software from the hardware. You can put supervisor into a container. Why did you move for the HCI to the classic virtualization solution?
Yeah, so we are committed
At the beginning, your
to.
solution, it was a HCI solution.
Well,
Why and when do you move to the solution closer than VMware and now Nutanix in the last months?
so I want to make sure. I thought you were asking one thing, and then now it's. So are you asking me why people move from VMware Nutanix to us?
No, why your platform moved from HCI at the beginning? Your platform was a HCI solution, and you move your platform to the more classical solution like the VMware with the hypervisor. Why? So why did you make Nutanix make the same the last month? So I know why Nutanix, because I talk a lot with the guy from Nutanix. But it's the first time I met you. So why did you make this movement?
So we have not moved away from a converged infrastructure. We've referred to ourselves as ultra converged for as long as I've been here. We can run in what we would call an HCI mode, where you would have pretty much an equal amount of storage and compute on the nodes. And many of our smaller customers will do that because it just makes sense. You know, if you have 3 or 4 nodes, as environments grow, it starts to make sense to go what we refer to as ultra converged. And that is you'll have nodes that are dedicated, or I shouldn't say dedicated, primarily servicing as storage nodes, and then other nodes that are servicing primarily as compute nodes. But that's totally optional. You can go back, you can add nodes that are balanced later. The point of that is you can do whatever you need to do at that moment in time, right? And so if you've been running with 4 dedicated storage nodes and 8 compute nodes, and the timing is such that you just want to buy 6 nodes or 4 nodes that are an equal amount of storage and compute, you can bring those in and it works just fine. We don't care.
Okay.
Philip asked you about Promox, and you mentioned some advantages of your company, but there is one more difference between you and Promox. For example, Vim fully support Promox, but doesn't support you. What do you think about it? Is this a problem for you or no?
So I missed the last part.
About once again, so Vim supports Promox, but
Vim
doesn't support you. What do you think about it? Could you comment?
So first, I got to be really careful with this answer. I made it almost all the way through without this coming up. Jeez. All right. So prior to the end of next month, I will tell you that I could make a very strong argument that you don't need another backup solution because of what we can do with IO Guardian and our replication capability. However, I also am a realist and know that there's a whole bunch of people that like to run Veeam, and I could also make an argument if I was still found our lead analyst at Storage Switzerland that I don't care what they say, you should have your data on something else other than this one thing. We will resolve the Veeam concern very elegantly in the next period of time.
Stay tuned.
So you
Yes.
prepare something.
Yeah. Well, I'm thinking to myself, I'm talking to the IT press corps, and I can't really say much, but I don't want to say nothing. So just stay tuned. We'll have we will start to like people with green logos in very short order. Let me put it that way.
Good. A question regarding your business model. So we understand the pricing, different things, etc. But you don't sell direct. You sell through channels.
Yes.
Okay. What about OEMing your option? Is there any discussion or talk already with some people who plan to or wish to embed your solution in a more global way, in white label approach, etc.?
Yes, we're certainly open to that, and we've had discussions around that. The challenge we've seen with that so far is everybody thinks they can do it better, or they think they can just grab KVM and go to market with it. I think they learned that that's not as easy as they thought it was going to be. I think both Dell and HPE have struggled with their KVM solutions because we've won a lot of customers from them. And so I think that there'll be I guess we would hope there'll be a regroup around that, and people would come to us to want to OEM things. You'll see a few announcements that will align to that over the next quarter that you'll find interesting, I think.
Any other question before we conclude?
Maybe, okay.
I don't know. Yeah. You can, if you have one, a good one.
Well, what time is it?
Maybe a strange question at this point of time, but you seems to do it pretty well, and there is a lot of interest in the market. Have you considered an exit strategy?
Uh-huh.
Oh, am I considering an exit strategy? Is that what you asked?
Yeah. If you're considering an exit strategy, now you're quite successful.
Our intent at this point is to keep doing what we're doing. Like I said, we're cash flow positive. We like being cash flow positive. We think it serves our customers well. Obviously, if a company backed up a dump truck full of cash, we'd have to talk to them. But at this point, none of those discussions are going on.
So you are cash flow positive, but do you need
Money.
to raise money to accelerate your growth?
Work, for example.
So we don't need money. We're fine from that perspective. And we like our growth where it is. We think, again, we're very committed to servicing our customers. We're growing. We think we're growing at a very good pace. And we intend to continue to do that. We're not, we're all, I mean, I'm under pressure. My sales team is under pressure to grow, but we're not going to take $150 million so we could grow even faster. We like our current growth models, and we're going to stay aligned to those.
Question regarding a hot topic today. Do you plan, or is it already the case, that you embed or plan to embed some AI capabilities that your product can leverage to, I don't know, templating, understand some configuration, some IO traffic, and finally recommend some action?
Yes. So first of all, there's some basic AI embedded into the product. We've actually exposed that to the users, and they can, let's call it a lightweight LLM. They can do kind of lightweight ChatGPT or Claude, whatever you want to call it, type of stuff. You can select different models, LLMs, and we can download them for you. It's a good starting point for many users, and for a lot of our users, that's all they need. We're cognizant, though, that there's a whole bunch of companies that all they do is AI, and so we'll support those guys. We support those guys as well, and we don't want to go too far. We don't want to become a company that competes with those companies. As far as the product itself, again, we have an advantage that all the telemetry information is self-contained, and so we are working on capabilities around, the first phase will be more recommendations and awareness. The second phase will be it can do stuff for you with your permission, and the third phase would be it'll just do stuff. There is some, I would refer to it more as machine learning already built into the product, and that's where a lot of our load balancing technology and resource optimization comes in.
Okay, good. Any other question before we conclude? No? Okay, with that, we wish to thank you, George, with all this crazy week.
Yeah.
Crazy week. Please, we record the session, but if you can just share me the PDF of the presentation, it would be good. Okay?
Yes. Yeah.
And a good
Yeah, I
picture.
think it's-
You see plenty of George picture on the internet.
Okay,
Yeah.
it's free to use them.
I'm everywhere. Yeah, and what I'll do, two things, Philippe. We had shirts coming your way, polo shirts. They got the same problem as me, and they didn't make it there. So we're trying to retrieve them. When we do, we'll get them to you guys. And then the other thing is, what I'm going to do, if it's okay, is load this up to a Google Drive link, because it's pretty big because of all the graphics.
Yeah.
And then
Okay.
you could just share that with the team, and they can just download it. Is that okay?
Yeah, perfect. Very good.
Okay.
And
Okay.
you say you mentioned also, I remember, the private access for case studies.
Yes, I'll make sure to include that as well. Thank you for reminding me.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. Very
Great.
good. Thank you, George.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Have
Thank
a
you.
good evening. Bye.
Thank you.
You too. Bye-bye.